Today we're talking about the best way to start practicing your scales. I have 3 preliminary exercises for you to do, then we'll start practicing scales. Hands together in 1 octave. I like to group my scales together by their fingering, so we'll start with group 1, which has 5 scales. Now, as an aside, if you've been watching these lessons and have found value in them, I'd love if you'd support these videos on Patreon. The link to my page is below, and I know that not everyone can contribute in that way. You can still show your support by liking this video, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. I work hard every week on these lessons with planning, producing, editing, making worksheets, and I love doing it, but it does take a lot of time. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. In this video over here, I talk about how to build or find the notes in any major scale. That's more music theory based, but if you don't know how to do that yet, make sure to first watch that. Today, we're going to focus more on the technique of playing scales, especially as a beginner. So our first preliminary exercise will be focused on our thumbs. First, I want you to place your hands anywhere on the piano keys. If you're using a good hand position, you'll notice that there's this space underneath your hand. Now with your thumb, I want you to move in and out of that space, so it's going side to side. Go ahead and try that with both of your thumbs. And then once you feel comfortable with that, put your right hand in C position. Now what I want you to do is play E with finger 3 and hold it. And just as a reminder, when you hold down keys, you don't need a ton of weight or effort behind it. Use the minimum amount needed to keep that key pressed down because this will help avoid too much tension from building in your hand and your forearm. Okay, so we're holding E. Now play C with your thumb. Then using that same motion that we practiced just a minute ago, move your thumb through that space and play F. Good. Then move the thumb back out and play C. Then you're just going to keep repeating that motion, playing F and then C. Then do the same thing with your left hand. Put finger 3 on A, then play C with your thumb, and then move your thumb underneath to play G with your thumb. And you'll repeat that a couple times until it feels comfortable. All right, now I want you to put both hands in C position. We'll do a simple exercise that only has 4 notes. The left hand is the easiest. Go from C up to F, then back down. The right hand plays the same notes, but the thumb is going to cross under the other fingers to reach and play that F. And then put hands together. Good. Now, in this second part, the right hand has the easier job. So finger 5 goes on C, and just play C down to G, then back up. Then put left hand finger 1 on C and play the same notes as the right hand, but with thumb crossing under to play G. And then put hands together. Very good. Okay, so this is our last exercise before we tackle the actual scales. We'll start in C position with both hands and just play from C up to F, making sure that the right thumb crosses under to play the F, just like we did in the previous exercise. From here, we're going to add 1 more note higher. Then add 1 more note, and this is an important one because this is where the left hand finger 3 crosses over the thumb to play A. Good. Then add one more note. And finally, add the last note, the C. Now, if this is your very first time playing a scale, you probably will have to repeat each step that we did many more times, and that's perfectly fine. The idea is that you'll repeat each step until it feels very comfortable before adding a new note. So let's do the second part of this exercise. We've already gone up the scale, so now we've got to go back down. Start with right hand finger 5 on C, left hand finger 1 on C. And then we'll play those 4 notes going down from C to G, making sure that the left thumb crosses underneath to play the G. And I bet you can guess what's coming next. So you're going to add one more note down. And then another note. Now watch out for this one because the right hand will cross with the finger 3 over the thumb. And then add another note. And then finally, add the C at the bottom. So those are our 3 preliminary exercises. Do those to get used to all of the independent crossings that are needed. But now, let's get into our Group 1 scales. These are grouped together because they all use the exact same fingering. I'm going to assume that you know how to build a major scale or have watched my video on building major scales. So with that in mind, I'll just be showing you the notes to the scales without the music theory knowledge behind it. So let's start with the C major scale. This one only uses white keys. So I'm going to play it for you slowly, and you should recognize some of these fingerings and thumb crossings because we've been doing them in our previous exercises. So now let's do the G major scale. So start in G position, then it's the same fingering as we used in the C scale. As far as notes go, take a look at the screen and you'll see the notes of this scale highlighted. G major uses 1 black key. And now D major, same fingerings but with 2 black keys. And and then A major with 3 black keys, same fingering. And finally, E major with 4 black keys. So those are all the group 1 scales. Practice those very, very slowly at first. Some people like to begin doing hands separately, which is completely fine to do, but I challenge you to jump right in with hands together. A lot of times, students will be able to play hands separately fine, no problem. But then when they try hands together, it feels like they're starting right from scratch. So I prefer just to jump right in with hands together. So it'll be a little while before we dive into our group 2 scales. So please take your time with these scales. Try to become as fluent as you can before we add on more complicated scales. In your downloads for this week, I've included the fingerings for group 1 as well as all the notes in each scale. So I hope these exercises were helpful for you. Scales are the building blocks of music and they can be a little tricky to play at first, especially hands together. But once you're able to play them fluently, you'll really feel like part of your new pieces are already learned because scales are everywhere. Next week, we're going to talk about sharps and flats, among other things, so keep practicing, and I'll see you next week.